And so the journey has just been one where, the focus has been on not what I can get, but who I can be and how I can give. And then I've learned to put into practice all the things that God has taught me and all the things I know how to do in the spirit and how I know how to connect spirit and soul and connect in that way, which I would have never thought about because it wasn't my past experience. And I look back and I think, okay, I probably didn't have the courage to step out of the relationship I was in, which was unhappy, although I had rationalized it to the point where, well, I've made vows, I'm not going to break them. Actually, from God's perspective, the relationship was over a long time ago.
It seems like things are really going off on a really wonky track over here. Suggestions on how to pray that people really begin to wake up, that when you lose God, everything falls apart at the seams, and it really is. Even to the point that people that aren't Christians are recognizing, we lost something.
I think, to be honest, you've got to be careful that isn't what God is planning. Bring people to a realization. So it has to get to the point where it's obvious that the reason that things are not as they were is because people have left the values of love and that God brings. So in a sense, it's finding the right time to legislate for the changes that God is doing within those situations to take place. Then people will start to look to the right source. And I think the same could be said of the political situation, financial situation. A lot of those things are beginning to be questioned by people because they're no longer providing the solutions and the answers that they might have once offered hope to do, but probably didn't anyway. And people are beginning to wake up. So I think, in a sense, the awakening is what we're legislating for, that people would wake up, that people would begin to realize and see the reality of life lived from a humanistic perspective, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil perspective, independence from God. It has its consequences. Ultimately, the consequence originally led to the flood. And now God isn't going to flood the earth again, because in fact, if the earth has been flooded with glory and love, but in a sense, people have to come to the realization that that is what they need in their lives. And sometimes when people are comfortable with the status quo, and so they have to be shaken out of the complacency of the American dream, in that sense, that, we're going to be able to get ourselves out of everything because we've got all of this and we're the biggest in the world and we've got everything. And that's a sort of bigger global picture that people might have. But then there's the individual, my life. Why is my life? Why am I not happy? Why is success not making me happy? Why is money not making me happy? Why? And the questions, I think, are promoted from the conscience and from God within to get people to start questioning, because then they'll start, asking and getting the questions answered. Well, because all of this system that we've developed is actually not based in God's kingdom at all. And needs to be shaken so that the only thing remains after the shaking is God's kingdom. So sometimes things do have to fall apart. Sometimes things have to get worse before people will look to another solution. I mean, the same is true for individuals who face struggles with addiction. If they don't get rock bottom and there's nowhere else to go, they don't look up. They keep looking down and they keep spiraling down until there's nowhere else to go. And maybe that is what God intends. And I think, which is why I think the whole, make America great again concept is totally flawed. America was never great. Neither was Great Britain. It was never great in its own strength. Only those things that reflected God's love and were in the world good things that they did, you could say was a reflection of God, are good. Everything else is not good at all. And any independence of we are great is pride. And I think sometimes things have to fall for people to recognize it's not about a nation, it's not about a system, it's not about any of those things. And I think that's probably where we are. And I think the pandemic has probably highlighted some of those issues, brought things to the front, made people realize that what they had was not as good as they thought it was, missed the relational, and began to question what is life about. So maybe that's what God is doing, and maybe we shouldn't pray that changes. Maybe we should be praying or legislating for that to be outworking its fullest extent, so that people would begin to awaken out of the darkness of deception that they've been living in and begin to see the truth, and the light would begin to shine. You know, what is it? Arise, shine, your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. Behold, deep darkness covers the earth. You know, and you could say that was talking about Jesus coming into a world which effectively was essentially completely following their own path. And you could say it was absolutely deep darkness. But are we in any different a situation now, other than we do have a lot of people who are saying that they have seen the light? Maybe it's actually those who are saying that they know God and Jesus that need to begin to be the light that would shine on the things which are hidden in darkness or obscured from people's understanding, so they could turn from those things and follow the light. You know, so maybe we need to be more of the light of the world. But it's not surprising that the darker things are, the easier it is for illumination to be seen. You know, you can have a candle out on a beach in the sun and no one would ever see it. You put a candle in a dark room and it illuminates the room. So maybe the darkness is not such a bad thing. But obviously you don't want, you know, the world to be in chaos and anarchy and terrible things happening. But on the flip side of it, sometimes it's only terrible things that shock people out of their existing mindsets and belief systems to enter into something better. So I probably don't have an answer of what we should do to change it, because I've got a feeling that we shouldn't change it until the right time is for the light to really expose everything in clarity. And maybe that is God waiting for the sons of God to arise as the light of the world.
So I suppose I have a question, Mike. Recently, I stepped away from a group that I was meeting with, and it was mainly because I felt that I needed to link up with God in relationship more deeper and get more clarity and understanding myself as to, you know, him working with me in relationship. And two, I just didn't feel that there was a mandate.
Yeah.
Like it was a free for all. And of course I feel buffeted because I know I need fellowship and I you know, I need to be around like-minded people, but yet I feel more strongly that I need relationship with God. He keeps reminding me and telling me all the time, partner with me. You and I walk this out, Jackie. Yeah. Lean into me, look to me in these circumstances. And I think in the past that I have had propensity to look, you know, link up with other people and their vision or which is fine. But I felt the Father tell me the other day, you had a wonderful foundation in the church world. You have a wonderful foundation with Mike and all that he's been teaching you. It's now time for you and I to build the foundation together.
Yeah. Sounds great.
So, you know, so I suppose a question would be, Mike, I mean, I know in my spirit how important it is to have a mandate. Even when I worked in the spirit in the local church, you know, we focused on the will of God, the purpose of God. And so I just kind of draw back when I'm not, after a while, not seeing a mandate being in function.
Yeah,
and
but I think what God is saying to you is the mandate is spend time with me in intimacy and forget the rest. Because sometimes you need a season to come
Yeah.
into that place of deeper intimacy, to go to the next level when it comes to government and when it comes to purpose. And I think we're conditioned into thinking we should be doing something.
Yeah.
Not doing anything. What am I doing? Where's my mandate? What am I doing? Not doing anything, and feeling almost guilty that we're not doing anything. But Jesus said, come to me and find rest. Now, initially, that rest is stop doing all the stuff you're doing, focus on getting deeper in relationship with me. Then let's see where that then unfolds the things from a different perspective, because you'll see things differently then.
Yes.
You'll have a different perspective, a different way of seeing through God's eyes, seeing from heaven rather than earth. And you may find that things change significantly because you're no longer doing, but being. And I think God, for everybody, would want them to come into a state of being. And to do that, you have to stop doing for a while. It's so hard to enter into being if you keep doing. Because we're conditioned to doing in everything, life, world. You should be doing something. You know, it's like, well, you should be busy. Well, why, you know, it feels guilty to relax. Well, God wants you to be enjoying the relationship. So don't put an agenda on it, and don't keep asking God what your mandate is. Just enjoy being with him and cooperate with him in that place of intimacy. And sometimes he may not say anything to you for a while. I learned more when he stopped speaking to me and started hugging me than ever before, because I got this infusion of knowledge and truth. And it was so hard it was almost like he had to constrain me to stop me doing. Because I was going into heaven every day, going to engage the art. What is my mandate? What are you calling me to do today? What are we going to be doing? So then I would engage him, open my first love gate, sort of exchange pleasantries, if you like. And then it was, what are we doing? Where are we going? And it was like, I think he got to the point where I think he was trying to show me that wasn't the ideal, but I wasn't listening. Because it's exciting doing things, particularly new things, from a position of, hey, I can do all this stuff in heaven. But that became my focus, and the relationship became a lesser focus. And so he hugged me for months and months and months. Father, Son, Spirit, hug me, hug me, hug me. I learned more about who they are, and therefore who I am, because he constrained me. And for the first few weeks, I still would ask, what we're going to do? Nothing. We just hugged. And then it was like, okay, maybe I'm asking the wrong question here. Maybe I need to stop asking questions. Maybe I just need to just enjoy the embrace, because I was squirming, trying to get away to do something. And he was trying to hug me closer, not letting me get away. So in the end, I just stopped struggling, just enjoyed being in that place. And that was another step on the journey that took me away from doing and my identity coming from what I do, to just learning to know myself from his perspective and the vast sum of his thoughts, agree with him. Then I didn't really have to focus on, well, what am I going to do today? Because I knew his heart. We get to that point where we instinctively know the heart and intentions of the Father, and we only seek to do that which he's doing. And we don't have to have a mandate in one sense. The mandate is his heart.
Yes.
So the closer I am to his heart, the more I'm only going to do what I feel and sense he's doing. And that was what Jesus was doing all the time. He didn't get up in the morning and say, Father, what's my mandate today? He just welcomed that presence, enjoyed being in the Father being in him, and then sensing the Father's desires, only did what he saw the Father doing or perceived the Father's heart to be, in intimacy, in relationship, and never had to do anything outside of that. And therefore wasn't challenged when other people wanted him to do something that wasn't on the Father's desire. Sometimes we find it really difficult when we're with groups of people not to be constrained by what they want us to do, or what they're asking us to do, or what we're invited to do. And maybe that's not a bad thing, that we get to the point where we're not in that place for a while, where we're sort of under people's direction or listening to what people think we should be doing. Sometimes we just have to stop, be still, and know that I'm God. Now, I know it doesn't mean stop life.
Yeah.
And I know I can be doing lots and lots of things and still be still and still be at rest, because it's now a state of being and mind rather than something I do. I'm not trying to rest, I'm at rest. But to do that, God had to take me through the process of stopping and getting deconstructed from the old covenant mindset of having to perform, be obedient, do stuff. And now I'm free not to have to try and please God with my performance, because he told me I'm already pleasing to him and I don't have to do anything. I'm loved unconditionally, so I don't need to do anything to earn that or deserve it or anything else. I just enjoy it. So enjoy it. Enjoy this season. Don't try and struggle your way out of it. Enjoy it.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. That's what the Father told me, that he was going to teach me how to see from a different perspective. And I'm sure there's many things he's going to do involved with this, but you definitely hit many points of confirmation. Thank you.
Yeah, this rest is so important going forward. Because it's so much easier to discern the Father's perspective and heart than when we're continually focused on what should I do? How do I do it? And then how do I do it right? You don't want to get it wrong, which is another one, and that's, again, that whole mindset of, well, if I'm not doing it well, if I'm not doing it perfectly, if I'm not doing it according to the will of God, well, actually, when I know God's heart, he says, do it whichever way you like. There's no right or wrong way of doing things. It needs to be how we do it from who we are. Therefore, you don't need to follow someone else's pattern of how you do something once you discover who you are. And being free from that mindset of needing to get it right, or we failed, or we've not done it good enough, and therefore, well, I'm not good enough. It comes back down to identity. When I know who I am, independently of any works, then I'm free. I'm free just to be. And everything flows then. There's such a flow that comes from being. Everything is energized. Everything is easier. Everything seems to be so much more clear when we're not sort of, what should I be doing? Oh, look at all the things in the world. I mean, you'll find a billion things to do if you look, but that doesn't mean that any of those things are the things that God's doing or God wants you to do. And the hardest thing is when you do see something that God wants done, but he doesn't want you to do it. Well, I seen it. Well, it's like, well, no, someone else will do it. That's fine. But it's difficult. There are struggles. When we sort of change the patterns of how we've lived, there are struggles. I remember when God asked Mary to stop doing church stuff, she struggled for months. It's like every Sunday morning at the time she should have been there, it was, I remember her talking about it. And it is like that sometimes. It takes time to readjust.
Yeah.
So
And I have to admit, to a certain degree, I do miss the fellowship of being, for so long in a group of people. But the idea of going back to a church now is a really hard, that would be a very, very hard transition to make back.
Yeah. And I'm not saying relationship is absolutely key. But as long as our relationship with God is primarily where our source is, then any other relationship is just something that adds to that and enables us to actually give. It's hard to give when we're not within any connection of people to give to, which is why I think we need to be open for the Father to show us areas where we can begin to engage with others and help people, and find new ways of fellowship in relation. Because I know when you were going out with the police and the different things, and they were all sort of making different connections. And I think sometimes we just see hey, there's a world of people out there that would desperately love you to be a friend to them. You know,
Joe and I are just getting involved in something here now, and it's really a fun thing, but we have a local guy here who made a huge amount of money in the cable TV industry and sold it off. And he has poured a lot of his money into building Smithsonian quality museums.
Mm.
I mean, really high end. And he has just opened the newest one, and it is the Savoy Auto Museum. And it is like a fine art museum. I mean, marble floors, the whole 9 yards.
Mm.
But they need people to do guided tours. Well, I've always loved cars. I mean, I'm not a total gearhead, but I've always been into it. And so we're in the process of training to give tours.
Yeah.
And so it's just another opportunity to interact with people that we would probably never cross paths with in a million years. But another opportunity to just get out and start interacting with people we never would before. And it's a fun thing to do. I mean, it's something that I've always had an interest in, you know, how these people can afford to buy these vehicles beyond my comprehension. I mean, there are several cars in there that are worth over $1 million, which for me, it's like, if I had that much money, would I buy that? No, but
I mean, that's small change. I mean, the new was it Pagani or something? Pagani, that one's 3.2 million.
You mean the Bugatti?
Yeah, no, not the Bugatti. The Pagani, is it? I think it is. It's called Pagani or something. It's 3.2 million.
But there is one room in there, and I'd say there's probably 10 cars in there, and the majority of them are owned by two brothers, and that's just a very small subsection of their whole collection.
Yeah.
And most of those cars are well over $1 million a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at them and I like them because I remember as a kid growing up, you know, in high school, these were the cars. If you had the money, this is what you had. I mean, I have fond memories of them. Like I said, if I had the money, would I be buying them? Probably not. But the whole thing is, it's another whole area of getting out and being around people and getting a chance to interact with people. Probably not so much the people that you would be working with on the tours, but the other tour guides, the other employees in the museum that you would get to build the relationships with. It's a whole new crop of people to start interacting with that probably would never cross paths with.
And I think that's probably what we've got to start looking at. Don't think fellowship as just sharing Christian stuff. It's like fellowship is with people that we can be ourselves and be the light and be that salt and be, you know, the living letter. You know, you're a living epistle to love. You know, and your attitude and the way you can show love and demonstrate love will be an example that will hopefully point them to a whole different way of being. You know, and I think for a lot of people, you know, we've been so busy in the church thing of doing ministry and doing church that you never had much time for anyone outside of it. You know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes, a time of reorientation a little bit, but, you know, the world needs friends. They need true demonstrations of love and grace and mercy. And it's like, who, if not us, who?
Yeah.
Yes, it was challenging me letting go of the situation that I let go of because I love the people deeply. Yeah. But I also feel like I let go of an obligation. And so this week I'm linking up with a girl I went to school with that is Catholic, but she and I just celebrate and flow together. And it's the very thing that you're saying. I don't have to be religious. I don't have to come off with all this stuff. I think Father's going to teach me how to be even more as we gather together on Thursday and just be, because I do have, you know, many times my children have said, Mom, we just need you to be Mom because I want to be their preacher or I want to be, and you have such desire for your children. And yet I've learned to come to peace and rest and knowing that as I'm about the Father's business, He will take care of my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the example of that, if we just want you to be mom, but primarily, that's what who God has given you to care for and look after, isn't it? So from that perspective, sometimes I look back at my life and realize I was too busy doing churchy stuff rather than actually spending time with the kids. And okay, most of the kids have got over that, but one still struggles with that, because it's like they felt rejected and not a priority. And I understand that, and it's difficult. Now, ultimately, you can't keep babying your children forever. They grow up, they've got to take responsibility for their own lives, but they still are there, and I think the more you are relaxed and the more you are just enjoying life, the easier they will find to seeing you in that role, in that way. But it's not easy. It's a reorientation. Absolutely. And I think that's what the world needs. It doesn't need to be told that it's messing up and doing wrong, because that comes with the judgmental attitude of condemnation. And, the way we reach people is by loving them unconditionally. And that is a reflection of God. And I'm sure he feels probably that God has a problem with it if he comes from that background.
I'm sure he does.
Therefore, we need to help him see God doesn't have a problem with him. God loves him, and God wants the best for him, whatever that might be. And I feel there's so much that we are focused on in trying to correct the world's behavior. And we've then become this angry people who protest and tell people they're doing wrong all the time. And the consequences of their doing wrong is they're going to be condemned forever. And we've got to change that narrative. And the only way we're going to change it is by fellowshipping with people unconditionally, as you say, not trying to convert them, but just be their friend. And where will they turn when they need a friend? To someone they feel cares for them. If he felt that you were just trying to slip God into the conversation every 2 minutes, then he would probably, I can see through this.
Yeah.
But if you're genuine, and obviously you are genuine, he likes that friendship, and that's people will. We can just relax, and just be friendly to people. Yeah. People will realize there's something behind that, because not everyone is like that. Some people have an agenda. And a lot of Christians, obviously, their major agenda is we've got to preach the gospel. Because we've been conditioned into, well, if I didn't preach the gospel and that guy dies, I'm responsible.
Yeah.
And it's like there's such pressure put on this evangelical view of, they could go out and get run over by a bus, get the gospel, and you didn't preach the gospel, and and it's just like there's such a heavy weight on that. But it's not difficult just to be friends. No, I agree. In that, there's a danger that things get so out of balance that, those things. Now, of course, when someone is struggling, they need help. We'll get them the help to understand what they're going through and why they're going through it without the pressure to them. If someone's struggling, that's the last time they should be making life decisions. Again, I just think we need to see the light come and illuminate these things, to bring things into the light so people will see the reality and the truth and start realizing that it's just a stupid fad most of the time. Now, I'm not decrying that some people do struggle with their identity, and they do have a genuine sense they don't know who they are or whatever, but a lot of it is just the current fad, which will probably pass. And I think sometimes we just got to say, okay, let's mitigate against the damage until this thing passes. Because if you come out and you start going against it and against it and against it, then you get a reaction the other way and it gets stronger. If you push against something and it pushes back, it gets stronger. So we've got to be careful that we don't start again, Christian, they're just, you can't do anything. They don't want you to do anything. They don't want you to enjoy life, blah, blah. but we do it behind the scenes. I think as soon as you start opposing it publicly, you highlight the agenda even more, and you make it a cause to fight for. The Christians are against us. We're going to fight again. We're going to have this cause. So I think you've got to be careful in how you deal with those things, because you don't want to make martyrs. You don't want to make a cause. Oh, they're against us. And I think we can legislate for that, and we can sign angels, and we can see their guardian angels protecting them, visitations from the angelic realm to dreams, keep them from the wrong decisions they may make. And there's all sorts of things I think we can do. But I think it's always danger to come against something in the same spirit and try and attack it, because I think you just cause it to react and get stronger and fight against you. So let's make sure we're doing it in the way God would do it, from a God perspective, from a heavenly perspective, and then, look to minimize whatever's going on and see it just fade away like a lot of other things do. I mean, it's like Gamaliel's advice. If something is God, then don't be against it. If something isn't God, it'll fade away anyway. So sometimes we just got to be careful we don't highlight the issue in such a way that it makes the issue becomes a stronger issue within culture, because, well, there's those Christians again, and it can be that way. It can feel that way, because it has been that way for a lot of things. We've been always seen as the negative ones, always saying, no, thou shalt not, you can't do that, that's wrong, this blah, blah, blah. Well, let's focus on the positive. The more we help kids to know their true identity, the less they're going to struggle with that identity. So let's help see better parents, better parenting, better sort of education in the right way. And let's look at seeing, where did this fad come from? Who was behind it? Well, we know who was behind it. What did he use to get this message out? Well, he must have used the education system, the university system, the PhD system within psychology and psychiatry and all that stuff. Sociology. Obviously, sociology teachers and all those must be teaching or pushing forward agendas that have come from somewhere. Let's deal with it at its root, if we had a different, if Christians hadn't abandoned the education system and abandoned academia, we probably wouldn't have so many of these views which are anti-God. But we did, and we need to start taking back the influence that we have to bring truth into the situations of where these things are going on. Because I do think you can't just look at the end. You got to look at where it started. And this probably started a generation or two or three back, where we stopped having the godly influence. And actually a lot of Christians stopped becoming teachers and stopped becoming educators, because they felt, well, some of them felt, what's the point? Because Jesus is coming back. So there was this whole eschatology.
Oh,
yeah. Well, what's the point of doing anything? Jesus is coming back. And I think there was a lot to that which created a negative vacuum out there. And when you have a vacuum, something fills it. So let's make sure there isn't a vacuum, and we fill that with a counterculture which demonstrates something different, but in the right way. I think we've just been so bad at how we've tackled issues that we've made them worse, not better. I'm not the arbiter of identity, God is. I think I've got to be careful that I don't look at people and then think I know who they should be and what they should be like. I need to love them as God does unconditionally. That's my role. I'm going to love them, as you say. All God's creation, I'm going to love, irrespective of what they're doing or how they're doing it. And I'm not going to make judgments. I'm not going to condemn them. Am I going to be happy that people are doing things which are damaging themselves and others? Of course not. I don't want anyone to do something which is going to damage their life or bring brokenness or fragmentation into their lives. So I'm never going to want that. But the best way I can help that not to take place is by loving them.
Yes. Amen.
And then they will know where to go when they've got questions or when they're struggling. Because a lot of these people just don't have anyone to talk to. And those they do talk to, give them the best wisdom, and because they don't understand themselves. So being a listening ear and being someone who cares, I think is really, really important in these type of situations. Rather than rushing to judgment and making a condemnation, because that's not going to change someone or help them change by telling them they're wrong. You need to help them find who they are. It's like telling someone they don't know who they are is not the answer. Helping them find who they actually are is the answer. And by telling them they are God's children, that God does love them, that they're unconditionally loved, that he's already accepted them and reconciled them, that's a very different message that can bring people into a relationship with God where all the other issues can be resolved. God can resolve identity issues.
Yes.
If people get close enough to him to discover who they really are. And God's he's less bothered with the externals than we are. He's interested in the heart. He's interested in the inner person, rather than the external behaviors that point to brokenness or point to lost identity. Problem with Christianity is it's focused on the external behaviors rather than the deeper inner issues that people have because they don't know who they are. And I think it's so important that we help people discover who they are.
Amen.
And to do that, you need to have a relationship with them. And you won't have a relationship with them if you're condemning their behavior. Because God doesn't. Let's face it, he's already forgiven them. He's already not counting their trespasses and transgressions against them. So why are we?
So I do want to congratulate you on your new relationship. I've been observing and listening and following, and actually I'm learning a lot from the restoration of relationships. And I love what you said, that Father said, well, what about you loving someone else? And that just spoke volumes. And I just love the testimony that Father's doing around your life in this circumstance.
Yeah, it is. It's one which has actually provoked quite a lot of people to begin to look in their own lives to say, okay, are they where God really wants them to be? And I guess I was, having dealt with the sort of loss of relationship and breakup of marriage and all of that, and come to terms with that, okay, this is the reality that it is, and I can't change it. Come to terms with that, dealt with the forgiveness issues and dealt with the emotions. I was fairly content. And I think what it's shown me is that God knows me better than I know myself. And God knows what is best for me better than I know myself. Because I would have been fairly, probably relatively okay, happy to just be content with my relationship with God, life as it was, enjoying life as it was, outworking my destiny and all that, and feeling fairly content. And I wasn't even thinking about a relationship, probably because, the previous wasn't that good, I guess. So you don't want to repeat of that. So it's like, oh, well, I'm okay. And I think I got to the point where I'm okay. So when God said, well, that's rather a selfish attitude, I was somewhat shocked and challenged. And then to say, what is that? What do you mean? It then changed my whole perspective again to, well, there's someone out there that you can make happy. He didn't say to me, there's someone out there that can make you happy. That wasn't the focus. The focus was you can make someone happy. So this is not a selfish thing. And it isn't selfish to have a relationship where you can make someone happy or love them. And so I had to readjust my whole thinking around the whole issue. And now I realized that, that scripture in Ephesians 3, God is able to do exceedingly abundantly what we can ask or think. I wouldn't have asked for this. I wouldn't have asked for how good it is because I wouldn't have known what to ask for. because I didn't know how something should have been. So I couldn't have asked for it. I could have only in generalized, well, I would like it better than I've had before, you know? So I didn't think about me. I thought about immediately, how can I connect with someone that I could love and I could make happy? So then when I sort of talked to God around it and sort of checked out that I wasn't just, you know, hearing what I wanted to hear, and I thought, well, no, I don't want to do this. You know, this is going to create all sorts of dynamics of hassle for me, you know, because I'm sort of, you know, content, you know, where I am, you know. And it was like, oh, now I've got to get out of my comfort zone, and I've got to go, how do I do this? I don't know, you know. So now I was just so grateful and so thankful that God is thinking beyond what I can imagine. And his thoughts, and some of his thoughts about me, are so much better than what mine would have been. And so the journey has just been one where, the focus has been on not what I can get, but who I can be and how I can give. And then I've learned to put into practice all the things that God has taught me, and all the things I know how to do in the spirit, and how I know how to connect spirit and soul and connect in that way, which I would have never thought about because it wasn't my past experience. You know? And I look back and I think, okay, I probably didn't have the courage to step out of the relationship I was in, which was unhappy, although I had rationalized it to the point where, you know, well, I've made vows, I'm not going to break them. Actually, from God's perspective, the relationship was over a long time ago. Because I talked to him about it. I said, well, you know, how do you see me now? Am I still married in your sight? And he said, well, no, you haven't been married in my sight for a long time, you know, but I wasn't able to see that. And I guess now I'm grateful that my wife was able to see it. And it's sort of, you know, God has brought us both out of a relationship, hopefully to bring us into a relationship that will bring about happiness in that way. And so it was a total reorientation of my thinking in many different areas. One, about what is relationship, what is marriage, what is our Christian version of it, and is that how God sees marriage, and is the legal version of marriage actually marriage from God's perspective? Or it can be, but it may not be, depending on what the relationship is and why people are going into it. The motive of the heart is what's important from God. You know, God's looking at heart motives. And so he challenged my heart motives. But I learned that my relationship with him and the intimacy of my relationship with him can be paralleled in my relationship with somebody else.
Yes.
So I remember when the Father looked into my eyes in the garden of my heart and had that impression on me that I'm wanted, and he wants to bless me. He wants relationship with me. I'm important. I'm valuable. I'm of worth. And just looking into his eyes showed me that. And then when I was able to look into someone else's eyes and I could see what was in their heart, I wanted them to feel the same, which is a choice to love unconditionally and to show that person that they are valuable, that they're special, that they are the apple of God's eye, that they are, you know, uniquely, wonderfully made. And it just gave me an opportunity of being able to do that, in putting into those things in practice, you know, and being able to show someone unconditional love and to be able to create a safe place for this relationship to grow. Because when people have passed the past, relationships have failed or have been broken, it's hard to trust again, or it's hard to know whether you're going to feel anything again, or whether you're going to feel, you know, what you should have done in the first place, but probably didn't, you know. And I'm so grateful for God for giving me what first love actually is intended to be. Because my relationship as a teenager, you know, we're all based in a whole lot of hormonal, lustful mess. You know, when I look back, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what relationships was. I didn't know what love was. You know, I'd never really been loved in that way, in the way that God has loved me. And so, yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey. And guess it's given me different perspectives, deconstructed some of my understanding about what really is marriage relationship. How does God view it? And there's certainly the need for being able to surrender spirit, soul, and body, you know, and the spirit and the soul need to come before the body, you know, because that gives the foundation for an intimacy and a union of one flesh, because you're already one soul and one spirit in one sense. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, that this can replace God, but it is a reflection of the love that God has and the intimacy that God has, that I can have intimacy with someone else, you know, to that degree. And now I realize that I would have never, ever asked for what I have now, because I wouldn't have known how to ask it, and I wouldn't have had that expectation. And I'm just so grateful that God is exceedingly abundantly able to go beyond and beyond and beyond what I could ever ask to think. And now I'm so grateful and thankful for the journey I've been on. And, you know, and I'm not looking at it the way I would have looked at it before. And of course you have to work through growing together and getting to know each other deeper and more. And, you know, but communication is the key to that. Friendship is the key. You've got to be good friends to then that to go into something deeper, you know, and being able to talk. I found I could, and being awakened to a side of me that I didn't really know I had also is just a wonderful thing to find and discover that I was living in still in lost identity in that whole era towards relationship. And now I'm discovering more and more of who I really am. And that's being sort of, I guess, blossoming in this relationship, as hopefully it is for her, you know, because she also is beginning to blossom, and her, you know, reticence to, be in a relationship, you know, because she didn't know what she could feel, you know, she didn't know whether she would be able to love again or feel love, or, you know, it's because, you know, when we get hurt and we get damaged and things don't work, it's sort of, you know, does create a suspicion and a fear or a caution, you know, whereas I threw caution to the wind, and it was like, no, I'm going to love, you know, because I know how to, in that sense. But God had to then work through all that to bring about a reality of what it's all about. Now, that's not to say that you don't work through relationship things and triggers, and sometimes you get triggered by the memory of something happens that triggers a memory from the past, and you end up feeling insecure, you know, and you have to work that through. But if you talk about it and you share how you're feeling, then you can come to, oh, right, okay, that's what that wasn't what I meant, or that's not what I was trying to do. But also sometimes we can be insensitive to each other, and therefore knowing how each other feels enables that sensitivity, that you think of the other person first before you do something or think something, because you can't operate independently as you can with God. This is why this relationship mirrors our relationship with God, because you can't walk with God and be independent, and you can't walk with somebody else and be independent and operate as a single person, because that will never work. Yeah. So I'm thrilled, really, and grateful for where the journey's taken me, and also encouraged that other people are also being challenged to ask that question of themselves. You know, well, where am I? You know, what has God got for me? Am I settling for second best? Am I settling for a less than kind of future? Because God has a better future and wants to bless me beyond anything I could possibly imagine or think. And that's how I feel. I feel really blessed.
I was encouraged. Excuse me. I was encouraged to apply it to my 39 years of marriage. And there was an awakening. It's like, whoa, this applies to all of us. Am I loving unconditionally? Am I willing, to let Father take us deeper? And so many things that you've said, I've been able to examine my own marriage, to my husband. So it's been encouraging.
Yeah, because I don't think we were ever taught how to open our spirit to each other and connect in the spirit. Some people may just have done it instinctively, but I don't think we were. And I know how to open my first love gate. I know how to engage God in my spirit. And I can't close that off to someone else. Otherwise, I've got no go areas which someone is going to feel excluded from. So I have to open my first love gate. I have to open the gateway to the garden of my heart to make sure that I'm not closed off and closing that area of my life off to someone else. And I think it's a big area of how do you become one, spirit, soul, and body. And I think there's a lot there that God will teach us and will help us to discover through our relationship with him that can be applied to our relationship with each other. And that doesn't mean that anyone's ever going to replace God, because they can't. But they can. The relationship can be a reflection of the relationship we have with God in our relationship with others. So I've been really blessed to discover and just to journey this out. So really happy about it all.
I'm glad you brought up the gateway of first love, because that's one of the things you said on one of the other calls. And so I began talking to my husband about that, and wanting us to open our first love gates. So I want to ask you, am I able to do that if he's not ready to do it, his own love gate?
Well, you can do what you feel you can do, and then that may create a safer place for him to do it. You can't force someone to do it, but you can do it because it's your choice. You can choose to open yourself up. Also, you can choose to engage your spirit around him to create a safe place for him. I can, just like I can put my spirit around and expand my spirit around any sphere of authority I have, I can also put it around people and engage those people in that way, spirit to spirit, and that's what I did. And I can't say it was a strategy. I just felt instinctively that I needed to be able to do that. And I think God was sort of guiding me, I guess, in it. But it is a choice you can make, but you can't force your husband to make it. But he will probably find it easier to make that choice when he discovers what it is to feel you, and to feel you in a different way, to deeper connection to you. So I think is what takes place, really.
And we can do this with children and those in our sphere of influence. It's okay to do it. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think you can do whatever you feel led to do by the Father. But yes, it's not that I'm inviting someone to come into my spirit, but I'm opening my spirit so that they can feel and sense me and sense and feel my relationship with God there.
Okay.
So it is more making sure that nothing is closed off and nothing is hindered or blocked. Therefore, someone feels that we're holding back or closed to them. It's a choice. And, engaging my spirit around her, she felt it actually, and, shared with me, what are you doing to me? What is going on? See, the only way she could describe it was, you're getting under my skin in a good way. Because I was going deeper. I was touching her at a deeper level in a spiritual way. I'm not an expert. I didn't know how it was going to work. I just instinctively did it. And I think then Father showed me, hey, if you're going to be one in spirit, then you've got to be able to open to each other at that level. You know how to do it, so you do it. So I did. Then I didn't demand she do it. And I still don't think she knows exactly how to do that, which is okay. But because she is open, and because I'm feeling and sensing her letting all the barriers down, because I've let the barriers down, then that is beginning to take place. But I would have done it anyway, because I knew it was the right thing to do for me to get that in that place of relationship and that safe place for her to be able to grow and to be nurtured and to be cared for by me.
Amen.
But it's not easy, because we all got stuff that we're having to work through. And when we've got years and years of background of marriage and whatever, to try and do something new is quite difficult, but it's not impossible because God's in it.